While my mother beat me in the living room, my father and brother would applaud as if it were a show. Hit her harder, they would shout between fits of laughter. For years, my pain was the spectacle that my family watched after dinner. Hello there, my wonderful viewers. What a joy to be able to come into your homes today and share a little bit of my life with you. I'm Margaret Johnson, 79 years old and blessed with many life experiences. I've lived here in Louisville, Kentucky since I was a little girl. This city has witnessed my entire story, the good times and the difficult ones too. These days, my greatest passion is taking care of my small compounding pharmacy. Just look at all these colorful bottles around me. Each one contains a different remedy that can bring relief and comfort to someone in need. As I prepare the formulas, my mind is free to travel through time. It's like therapy for me, you know. Each medication I prepare is like a small piece of hope that I offer with my own hands. I started in pharmaceuticals when I was young, but I only managed to open my own establishment after years of hard work. It was the fulfillment of a dream I had nurtured for a long time. I started with a tiny pharmacy on Oak Street, then moved to a larger space on Main Street, and now I have this cozy little corner here downtown. I personally serve many of the customers who come to get their compounded medicines, especially the elderly who have trusted me for decades. I'm sitting here in the back of the pharmacy, my favorite spot. I have a rocking chair that's gotten a few patches over the years, just like me. All around me are my books on pharmacology and herbal medicine that I consult whenever I need to. The smell of dried herbs that I keep in glass jars mingles with the gentle aroma of essential oils. If only you could smell it. This is where I receive my grandchildren on weekends to teach them a little about the power of medicinal plants. They love when I show them how a simple herb can become a powerful remedy, even when the stories behind that knowledge aren't always so beautiful. Because, my dears, not everything in life is sunshine and roses, is it? But it's precisely the storms we face that teach us to value the sun when it appears. Oh, if you're enjoying this beginning of our conversation, I'll ask one little thing. Click that like button and subscribe to the channel. It helps this grandma continue sharing her stories. And for those who've already subscribed, a big warm hug from the bottom of my heart. And you, my dear viewers watching now, tell me in the comments, what town are you watching from? And what time of day did this video reach you? With your morning coffee, after that little afternoon nap, or in the evening, wrapped in your blanket. I imagine you on the other side of the screen, and it warms my heart. I always read all the comments, so let me know and let's create a chain of caring. Today I wanted to share with you a difficult story, but one that was very important in my life. A story about a girl who lived on a stage she never asked to be on. About a cruel spectacle that happened within the walls of her own home. Danger doesn't always come from outside. Sometimes it's right under our own roof, wearing the face of those who should be protecting us. You know, when I look back and remember the frightened girl I was, I feel a mixture of sadness and pride. Sadness for what I went through, pride for finding the courage to change my story. Because in the end, we are all authors of our own destiny, even when it seems we've lost the pen. I'll tell you how I transformed my suffering into strength, and how a small object in the bottom of my pocket changed the course of my life forever. It's a story about finding courage when you think there's not a drop of it left inside you. When I remember my childhood in Louisville, I see a small girl with braids walking the streets of this city with her eyes always lowered, afraid to draw attention. A girl who didn't know she had the right to a different life. I was born here in Louisville at the end of the 1940s when the city still had that fresh new smell. My parents, August and Gertrude Johnson, came from the East Coast, seeking better opportunities in this developing land. My father worked as an accountant at a tobacco company, and my mother, well, she said she took care of the house. But what she really did was cultivate a bitterness that I never understood where it came from. Our family lived in a wooden house in the old part of the city, close to Cherokee Park, but that was long before it became the landmark it is today. It was a simple but pretty house with a front porch all decorated with ferns that my mother tended to with a care she never showed for me. The wooden floor creaked when we walked. It seemed like the whole house was talking. It had 3 small bedrooms, a living room with a floral sofa where my father liked to sit after dinner, and a kitchen with a wood stove that made everything smell like sweet smoke. Besides me, there was my brother Ronald, 5 years older. He had my mother's eyes and her temperament, too. From an early age he learned to see me not as his little sister but as someone inferior, someone who deserved to be the target of jokes and contempt. It's strange, you know, How such different feelings can grow within the same family. My day began early. I woke up when the sun had barely risen to help my mother with breakfast. While other girls my age were still sleeping, I was already lighting the stove, washing dishes, sweeping the floor. Girls need to learn early, my mother would say, while Ronald continued sleeping until it was time to go to school. At Jefferson County High School, I was that quiet girl who sat at the back of the class. I didn't raise my hand even when I knew the answer. I didn't participate in games during recess. My friends were few but precious: Irene and Janet. During breaks, we played hopscotch in the corner of the yard or traded stickers hidden under the big oak tree that shaded the schoolyard. They were rare moments of joy, like drops of rain in times of drought. After school, while the other children went to play in the park or stayed on the street flying kites, I ran straight home. Being late meant trouble, and I already had enough trouble waiting for me. I would arrive home breathless, put away my school materials, always very organized, because any wrinkled page became a reason for a lecture, and start my second shift, washing clothes, ironing, helping with dinner. Sundays, which for many families were days for outings and rest, were the most tense for me. The house had to be impeccable for lunch. My father invited colleagues from the tobacco company, and my mother transformed outside. For others, she was all smiles and kindness. Would you like some more fried potatoes? August is so lucky to have such a helpful daughter, she would say, running her hand over my head as if we were the most loving family in the world. But as soon as the door closed behind the last guest, the smile disappeared. It was as if a curtain had fallen and the real show began. Anything became a reason. A poorly folded napkin, a glass with a fingerprint. An answer that took too long. Look at this worthless girl, she would begin while I tried to make myself small in a corner of the kitchen. She can't even help properly around the house. What will become of her when she grows up? That's when my father would settle into the sofa, as if preparing to watch his favorite program on television. He didn't lift a finger to defend me. On the contrary, he would adjust himself better, cross his legs, and sometimes even ask my brother to bring the newspaper. Gertrude is right, he would say calmly. How will you find a husband being so clumsy? Keep this up and you'll be an old maid. Ronald, my brother, was the worst. He not only watched but actively participated in those moments. Mom, tell them what she did at school last week. He would provoke inventing stories to fuel my mother's anger. Or, she hid a piece of cake under the bed. I saw it. Lies that only served to increase my suffering. It was on a Saturday afternoon. I had just turned 9 when I realized that this wasn't normal. I was at Irene's house, my friend from school. Her mother, Mrs. Wilson, was a seamstress and worked from home. While we were playing, Irene accidentally knocked over a jar of pins. Thousands of them scattered across the floor. I instinctively cowered, expecting the shouting, the slaps, the public humiliation. But what happened left me confused. Mrs. Wilson just sighed, took a small broom, and began gathering the pins, laughing and saying, "Girls, come help me here. Whoever finds the most gets a caramel." I went home that day with a question hammering in my head. Why at Irene's house was an accident a reason for laughter and at mine for tears? The nights were the worst. After dinner, when the dishes were clean and put away, what my father called family time began. They would sit in the living room, my father in the armchair, my mother and brother on the sofa, and call me. "Come here, Margaret," my father would say with that voice that seemed calm but froze me inside. "Tell us about your day." It was a trap. It always was. No matter what I said, it would be the beginning of the show. If I told something good, it was a lie. If I told something bad, it was because I deserved it. If I remained silent, it was defiance. "Look how ungrateful she is," my mother would begin. "We give her a roof, food, clean clothes, and she can't even speak properly." Then came the pinches disguised as caresses, the hair pulling that looked like play to anyone watching from outside. My brother would laugh. My father would encourage. "This girl needs to learn, Gertrude. Teach her properly." On worse days, when something had particularly irritated my mother during the day, the game would escalate. The pinches became slaps. The words became crueler, heavier. And while I cried trying to protect myself with my skinny arms, I heard the laughter. "Look at her face," Ronald would gow, pointing. "She looks like one of those sad clowns from the circus." "Harder, Gertrude," my father would encourage as if watching a football game. "That one only learns the hard way." I didn't understand why they hated me so much. What had I done wrong? Was it because I wasn't as pretty as the daughters of my father's friends? Because I didn't get such good grades? Or was there something wrong with me? Something that made the people who should love me feel that pleasure in seeing me suffer? At night, alone in my little room, I would hug my pillow and dream of the day when everything would be different. I imagined a family like Irene's where accidents were just accidents, not crimes. Where making mistakes was allowed and learning was part of growing up. I would fall asleep with the marks burning on my skin, but with the small hope that maybe one day I would be able to escape from that stage where I never asked to be. Time passed and that girl with braids grew up, always with her eyes lowered, always trying to be invisible, because in our house, being noticed was never a good thing. It meant that soon the curtains would open for another painful spectacle where I was the star who never asked to shine. When I turned 14, something changed inside our house. It wasn't a good change. It was as if the show became more elaborate with new acts and new humiliations. My body was beginning to show the first signs of adolescence, and that deeply bothered my mother. "Look at her," she would say to my father during dinner, pointing at me as if I were an object, not her daughter. "Already thinking she's a young lady, all perky, soon she'll want to date to show off out there." My father would slowly lower his newspaper, examine me over his glasses as if evaluating an animal at the market, and give his verdict. "You're right, Gertrude. She's at the dangerous age, we need to keep an eye on her." And so my small freedoms were cut one by one. I could no longer go to Irene's house after school. I couldn't participate in group projects at school. Even the path between school and home was timed. 5 minutes more and the evening show would be even worse. It was during this time that Mr. Harris arrived at our school to teach English. A tall man with gray hair and kind eyes who had a different way of teaching. He didn't just talk about verbs and nouns, but read poetry aloud, told stories about writers, made us imagine worlds beyond those classroom walls. He was the first to notice something different in me. One day, after I handed in an essay about my family, he asked me to stay after class. "Margaret," he said softly when we were alone, "is there anything you'd like to talk about with me?" Something happening at home. I felt a chill in my stomach, a fear rising in my throat. No one had ever asked this before. No one had ever really looked at me and seen what was hidden behind my silence. But years of training made me smile and say, "No, Mr. Harris, everything is fine." He didn't insist, but before I left, he said something that I carried with me like a treasure. "Know that words have power, Margaret, both to hurt and to heal. One day you will find your voice." On my way home that day, the teacher's words echoed in my head. My voice I could barely speak during dinner without my throat closing in fear. What power could I have? But it was also that year that another change happened. The tobacco company where my father worked began to have difficulties and money at home became tighter. The shouting increased, but now it wasn't just directed at me. My mother and father argued about bills, about debts. "We need more money," my mother repeated. "This girl is old enough to work." And so, against all expectations, came my first small freedom, a part-time job at Mr. Jenkins' grocery store near the bus station. I started by helping to organize the shelves, then moved on to serving customers. I worked after school from 300 to 700 in the evening, Monday to Friday. The salary was small and my parents took almost all of it. To help with house expenses, they said, but they allowed me to keep a few coins, the first money I could call my own. Working at the grocery store was like a window opening in a house that had been closed for years. There I met different people. Mrs. Nelson, a widow who always bought a little of everything and would chat about her plants. Theodore, the bus driver who stopped for a quick coffee between trips. Young Carla, who worked as a maid in the houses of the rich neighborhood and always had stories to tell. "You're a special girl, Margaret," Mr. Jenkins told me one day while I was organizing cans of peas. "So quiet but attentive to everything. You'll go far yet." Those words were like drops of rain on dry land. I absorbed them with a thirst I didn't know I had. Was it really possible to go far? To be someone beyond that girl who served as entertainment for her own family? At home, things got worse. My brother Ronald, now 19, began working with my father. But instead of maturing, it seemed that his pleasure in seeing me suffer only increased. He brought new scripts for the nightly show. "Mom," he would say during dinner with that smile I knew so well, "did you know that today Margaret was talking to a boy in front of the grocery store?" Took about 10 minutes to go in. It was no use explaining that it was just Mr. Jenkins' son delivering boxes. The lie was planted and that night's show already had a defined theme. "So that's it," my mother would begin, her eyes shining with an anger I never understood. "Gets a little job and already thinks she's independent, already offering herself out there." It was always like that. An accusation, a sentence with no possible defense, and then the hair-pulling disguised as fixing would begin. "Come here and I'll teach you how to fix yourself properly. Look at this hair. Looks like you haven't even calmed it," as she pulled my hair forcefully, braiding it so tight that my head hurt. My father and brother watched from the table, commenting as if at a football game. "She is getting sassy indeed," my father would agree. "I think this job wasn't a good idea." "How about a better punishment?" Ronald would suggest, like someone asking for more action in a boring movie. What hurt me most wasn't the pulling or the pinching. It was the pleasure I saw in their eyes. How could they enjoy seeing me cry? What had I done to them to deserve such cruelty? These questions tormented me night after night as I bit my pillow to cry silently. It was on a particularly difficult night when I turned 16 that I realized I couldn't take much more. There had been no celebration for my birthday. There never was. But that night, my brother brought a gift, new information to feed the spectacle. "Did you know," he began during dinner, "that Margaret has been writing little things in a notebook, poetry, believe it. I found it hidden under her mattress." My blood froze. That notebook was my only refuge, the only place where I could put into words everything I couldn't say. Mr. Harris had encouraged me to write, saying that words could be my salvation someday. My mother put down her fork. "What? Showing our life to others? Writing lies about us?" "No, Mom," I tried to explain, my voice almost disappearing. "They're just stories, things I imagine." "Bring that notebook here, Ronald," my father ordered, and my brother smiled, leaving the table to fetch my treasure. When he returned with the blue notebook in his hands, I felt as if they were carrying my exposed soul on a tray. My father began to read aloud in a mocking tone the little poems I had written about free birds, open windows, limitless skies. "Look at this," he laughed. "Think she's Emily Dickinson now. How shameful, a daughter of mine with such nonsense in her head." And then came the worst moment. My mother took the notebook from his hands, went to the wood stove, and without hesitation threw it into the fire. I watched the pages curl, darken, and turn to ashes, taking with them the only moments when I had felt truly alive. "That's for you to learn," she said, returning to the table. "No secrets in this house. No stupid fantasies." That night, the show was especially cruel. As my mother pulled my hair and pinched my arms, reciting excerpts from my poems in a mocking tone, my father and brother laughed and applauded. "Now she's going to cry," Ronald narrated like a sports commentator. "Look at her face. Looks like those soap opera actresses." "Harder," my father encouraged my mother. "She needs to learn that the place for people like her isn't writing nonsense. It's working." When they finally let me go to my room, something inside me had changed. I looked at the small cracked mirror on the wall and no longer recognized the person I saw. It wasn't just sadness in my eyes anymore. There was something new, a small spark that refused to go out. The next day, on my way to the grocery store, I passed by Mr. Alistaster's pharmacy. In the window, I saw a small canister on sale. "Pepper spray for personal protection," the label said. It was expensive for the little money I had saved, but something made me go in and buy it. "It's dangerous for a young lady to walk alone at night," Mr. Alistaster commented as he wrapped the canister. "Especially coming back from work. You're right to protect yourself." I kept the spray in my dress pocket, feeling its weight against my leg. It was small, but somehow it made me feel less defenseless for the first time in my life. That same week, something happened that changed everything. I was returning from the grocery store. It was almost night. The Louisville sky had that purple and orange tone that I always thought was so beautiful. I was walking quickly because I knew that every minute of delay would be used against me later. When I turned the corner of our street, I heard laughter coming from our house. The living room window was open, and the voices of my father and brother clearly reached the sidewalk. "Today we'll do it differently," my father was saying, his voice excited as if he were planning a fun outing. "When she arrives, you start, Ronald. Say you saw her talking to some boy. Then your mother will start the show, and we'll pretend we're defending her just to join in later." "Good idea," my brother's voice replied. "It'll be funny to see her all confused, thinking she has someone on her side for the first time." I stopped on the sidewalk, my entire body trembling. It wasn't just thoughtless malice. They planned every detail of my suffering like directors of a macabre spectacle. "This girl is our entertainment, isn't she?" My father laughed. "I don't know what we do without having her to liven up our nights." It was at that moment, standing on the sidewalk, listening to my own family planning my humiliation, that something broke inside me, or perhaps something finally mended. The small spark in my eyes grew, becoming a flame that could no longer be contained. I touched the pepper spray in my pocket. I hadn't bought it to protect myself from strangers on the street. Deep down, I had always known that the real danger was inside my own home. That night, I didn't enter the house immediately. I stayed on the sidewalk for a few minutes, breathing deeply, trying to organize my thoughts. The weight of the spray in my pocket seemed to have increased. It was as if that small object represented a decision I still didn't have the courage to make. When I finally went in, I did my best to appear normal, to not show that I had heard the conversation. But something in me was different. I observed everything with new eyes, as if I were watching a play for the 1000th time, but finally understanding the complete script. "You're late," my mother commented from the kitchen without even looking at me. 15 minutes. What were you doing? Or Mr. Jenkins asked me to organize a delivery that arrived late. I replied, my voice firmer than usual. My brother looked at my father and gave that smile that I knew so well. It was time to start the show. Exactly as they had planned. "Delivery?" Ronald laughed. "Or were you flirting with that mechanic's son from the corner? I saw you talking this morning." All smiles. And so it began. My mother dropped the spoon she was stirring the soup with, her eyes flashing. My father slowly lowered his newspaper, preparing to watch. And I, for the first time, didn't just feel fear. I felt disgust. A wave of disgust so strong that it almost made me vomit. "So that's what you've been doing," my mother began, approaching like a storm. "While we kill ourselves, working to support you, to give you a roof, you're offering yourself to anyone on the street." As always, it wouldn't help to deny it. The truth never mattered in that house. What mattered was the ritual, the show, the sick satisfaction they felt seeing me suffer. That's when my father played his part in the agreed script. "Calm down, Gertrude," he said, feigning moderation. "Let's hear what she has to say." I looked at him at that false expression of reasonableness. I knew what would come next. I had just heard the complete plan through the window. First, they would pretend to defend me, then make the humiliation even greater. "Is this true, Margaret?" my father asked with fake concern. "No," I answered simply, knowing that it didn't matter what I said. "See, Gertrude, the girl says no." My mother huffed, displeased with the interruption of her moment. But my father continued, and I saw the pleasure grow in his eyes. "If she's lying, she deserves a greater punishment." After all, lying to parents is worse than anything else, and so the trap closed exactly as I had heard from outside the house. My brother was openly smiling now, eager for what would come next. The ritual followed its course that night. The hair pulling disguised as fixing, the pinches on the arms that would leave purple marks the next day. The cruel words about how I was ungrateful, how I was stupid, how I would never be anything in life. "Look how red she gets," my brother commented, laughing. "Looks like a ripe tomato. She's just like her aunt," my father added, referring to my mother's sister I never knew. "The same foolish face when she cries. Remember Gertrude? Your sister was also such a crybaby." My mother just squeezed my arm harder, her nails digging into my skin as she shook me. "You are nothing," she whispered near my ear. "You will be nothing. You should thank me for teaching you how hard the world is." That night, when they finally let me go to my room, I didn't cry as usual. I sat on the edge of the bed, my body aching, but my mind strangely clear. I took the spray from my pocket and examined it under the weak light coming through the window. "For personal protection," the label said. In the days that followed, a subtle change happened inside that house. I continued going to school, continued working at the grocery store, continued enduring the nightly show, but something in me was different. I no longer lowered my eyes when they provoked me. I didn't beg when they hurt me. I observed everything with a detachment I had never felt before. This change didn't go unnoticed. My mother began to get nervous about my new behavior. "What's gotten into this girl?" I heard her ask my father one night. "She has a strange look. I think she's up to something." "She must be dating in secret," my father replied. "Or worse, we have to keep an eye on her." And so the surveillance increased. My brother began to follow me on the way to the grocery store. My father would appear by surprise at my work, saying he was just passing by to see how things were. My mother searched my few belongings when I wasn't home. It was during one of these searches that she found the pepper spray. I had changed its hiding place several times, but that day, distracted with so many worries, I had left it in an obvious place inside the pillowcase. When I got home from work, my mother was waiting for me in the living room, the small canister in her hand, shaking it as if it were evidence of a crime. "What is this?" she asked, her voice dangerously calm. I felt the blood freeze in my veins. It wasn't just the spray she had found. It was my only hope, my only plan. "It's to protect myself on the way from work." I answered, trying to sound casual. "Mr. Allister from the pharmacy said it's dangerous for a girl to walk alone at night." My father, who was sitting in the armchair pretending to read the newspaper, lowered it slowly. "Protect yourself from whom?" he asked with false concern. "Is someone bothering you on the way?" "No, Dad. It's just a precaution. My mother exchanged a look with my father. That look I knew so well. It was the look that preceded the worst nights when the show would be particularly cruel. Precaution, she repeated, turning the canister between her fingers. Or were you planning to use this against us? Is that it, Margaret? Having bad thoughts against your own family? No, Mom, of course not, I protested, but I knew it was useless. The sentence was already given before the trial even began. I think we need to teach a special lesson today, my father said, rising slowly from the armchair. Call Ronald, he wouldn't want to miss this. What followed that night was the worst show they had ever staged. It started, as always, with provocations and accusations, but this time the theme was betrayal. I had betrayed my family by thinking of defending myself. I had been ungrateful to imagine that I needed protection against them. It's us who protect you from the world, my mother said as she pulled my hair hard, pretending to braid it. It's us who teach you how things are. And this is how you thank us. My brother, who had been hurriedly called from the bar where he was with friends, seemed particularly animated that night. Let's see what she was going to do with this, he said, taking the spray from my mother's hand. Was she going to spray it in your eye, Mom? In yours, Dad, I would never do that, I said through tears, feeling despair grow. It's just for the way from work, I swear, Lear, my father accused. You were always a Lear, just like that aunt of yours, Gertrude. Tell her what happened to your sister when she tried to rebel. My mother squeezed my arm even tighter. My sister thought she was smart, thought she could run away, start a life away from family. You know what happened to her? She ended up in the gutter. Nobody wanted to help, nobody cared, died alone like a dog. I never knew if this story was true. I never met this mysterious aunt who appeared in conversations only as an example of failure, as a warning of what would happen to me if I tried to escape. That's what will happen to you if you continue with these ideas, my mother continued. You think anyone out there cares? You think anyone will protect you better than us? As she spoke, my brother opened the spray canister and began to smell it, making faces. Gah, what a strong smell, he said, laughing. Imagine this in someone's eye. Must sting like crazy. Give me that here, my father ordered, taking the canister. It's not a toy. It was then that he had an idea that made my blood freeze. I saw in his eyes that dangerous gleam, that anticipated pleasure that always preceded the worst cruelties. You know, Margaret, he said calmly. I think you need to learn what this spray does to understand the danger it represents. What do you mean? My mother asked, curious. I'm thinking that maybe we should show her how this spray works. Just a light spray for her to feel what she was going to do to us. My brother clapped his hands in excitement. Good idea, Dad. That way, she'll never think of using this again. My mother hesitated for a moment, not out of concern for me, but for fear that the neighbors might hear if I screamed too loudly. Don't worry, my father said, noticing her hesitation. We'll do it in the storage room in the back. Nobody will hear anything. And so, I was taken to the small tool room at the back of the house. That damp room without windows that was used to store old junk. My father held my arm tightly. My brother went behind, practically skipping with anticipation, and my mother followed us, still holding the spray. It was at that moment, as I was being dragged to that dark room, that I realized that night would not just be another episode in the endless spectacle of my life. It would be the final act. One way or another, something had to change. The tool room was the darkest place in our house. It smelled of mold and old oil, and when the door closed behind us, I felt as if I had been buried alive. The only light came from a weak bulb hanging from the ceiling, which swayed slightly, creating dancing shadows on the peeling walls. My father pushed me to the center of the room. I stumbled on some tools scattered on the floor, but managed to stay on my feet. My mother was standing near the door, still holding the spray, while my brother leaned against an old wooden bench, crossing his arms in anticipation. So you wanted to protect yourself from us, my father said, circling me like a predator. From us who gave you everything, food, clothes, education. What ingratitude, isn't it? I felt something different growing inside me. It wasn't just fear. It was a certainty, the certainty that this moment was decisive, that what happened in that little room would change my life forever. It wasn't to use against you. I tried to explain, my voice trembling. Liar, my mother shouted from the door. Always lying, just like my sister. Leave her, Gertrude. My father intervened, his voice falsely calm. Let's do it the way we planned. He approached me and I instinctively backed away until I felt the cold wall against my back. There was nowhere to run. You know, Margaret, he continued, every action has a consequence. You wanted to hurt us with this spray, so it's fair that you learn how it works, don't you think? My brother laughed softly, adjusting himself to get a better view of the show. "It'll be funny to see her face, Dad." My father extended his hand to my mother, asking for the spray. She hesitated for a moment, not out of compassion, but out of a cold calculation. "What if she can't go to work tomorrow? The money will be missed." "She will work," my father replied. "We won't use much, just enough for her to learn the lesson." It was at this moment that something inside me completely broke, or perhaps it would be more correct to say that something was rebuilt. Mr. Harris's words echoed in my mind. "One day you will find your voice." Would it be there in that dark, stuffy little room that I would finally find my voice? My father took the spray from my mother's hand and turned to me with a smile I will never forget. "Now stay still. It'll sting a little, but you can handle it, can't you? You've always been good at handling things." He uncapped the canister and took a step in my direction. My mother and brother also approached, not wanting to miss any detail of my suffering. "Wait," I asked, trying to buy time. "Please, Dad." "Now it's please, Dad," he mocked. "Too late for manners, don't you think?" As he raised the spray to the level of my face, something strange happened. Time seemed to slow down. I saw with crystal clarity every detail of that moment. The cruel smile on my father's face, the shining eyes of my mother, the morbid excitement of my brother. I saw my entire life reflected in those faces, years of humiliation, of pain, of shows where my suffering was the entertainment. "Never again," I whispered, so low that perhaps only I heard. "What?" my father asked, bringing the spray even closer. It was then that I acted. With a quick movement that I didn't even know I was capable of making, I hit his hand, making him drop the spray. The small canister fell to the floor, rolling away. There was a moment of absolute shock. No one in our house had ever seen me react. For a fraction of a second, everyone was paralyzed by surprise. "You little devil?" my father roared, recovering from the shock. "Now you'll see." He advanced towards me, fists clenched. My mother took a step forward, ready to help him. My brother leaned away from the bench, eager to participate. It was at that exact moment that I lunged to the side, sliding along the wall, and dove towards the fallen canister. My fingers closed around it a second before my brother's hand could reach it. "Get her!" my father shouted. But it was too late. In one continuous motion, I uncapped the spray and pointed it at them. My hands were shaking, but my determination was unshakable. "Stay back," I said, my voice firmer than it had ever been. They stopped, surprised again by this version of me they had never seen before. "You wouldn't dare," my mother said. But I detected the doubt in her voice. "No," I asked. And at that moment, even I didn't know the answer. My father was the first to regain confidence. "Stop being silly, girl. Give that here and maybe we'll go easy on you." He took a step in my direction, his hand extended, his face a mask of false patience. Behind him my mother and brother waited, ready to advance as soon as I lowered my guard. "No," I said simply. "It's over." "What's over?" my brother asked with a nervous laugh. "The little brave Margaret show. You'll end up getting double the beating." My father took another step, and that's when I did what I had to do. I pressed the spray, not aiming directly at his face, but creating a mist between us. It was enough. He backed away, coughing and rubbing his eyes. "You crazy girl," he shouted, his voice choked by the irritation in his eyes and throat. My brother advanced next, trying to grab me, but this time I aimed directly at him. The spray hit his eyes head-on, and he fell to his knees, screaming and desperately rubbing his face. "My eyes? I can't see anything." My mother stood paralyzed for a moment, torn between helping my father and brother or coming after me. I took advantage of her hesitation and pointed the spray at her. "Don't come closer," I warned. She looked at me with a hatred I will never forget. "You'll regret this for the rest of your life." "No," I replied, feeling a strange strength take over me. "You're the ones who will regret every night you turn my pain into fun." And then, with a quick movement, I sprayed in her direction. I didn't wait to see the result. I took advantage of the confusion, the screams and laments, and ran to the door. I crossed the kitchen at full speed, grabbed my small bag that I always kept ready near the door, a habit I had secretly developed in the last few months, and went out into the Louisville night. The fresh air hit my face like a blessing. I ran down the street without looking back, hearing the screams diminish in the distance. I didn't know exactly where to go, but I knew I couldn't go back. Never again. My feet took me instinctively to the only place where I had felt some safety, Mr. Jenkins' grocery store. It was already closed at that hour, but the old shopkeeper lived in the back of the establishment. I knocked on the back door, breathless, tears now flowing freely down my face. I heard slow footsteps approaching, and then the familiar voice of Mr. Jenkins. "Who's there at this hour?" "It's me, Margaret," I managed to say between sobs. The door opened, and the wrinkled, gentle face of my employer appeared, illuminated by the weak light of a lamp. "Good heavens, girl, what happened to you?" He looked at my face, marked by tears, at my disheveled clothes, at the small bag I clutched to my chest like a shield. I tried to explain, but the words wouldn't come. "Come in. Come in," he said, opening the door wider. "You don't need to explain now." I entered trembling into the small kitchen behind the grocery store. Mrs. Jenkins, his wife, was sitting at the table mending a shirt. When she saw me, she immediately dropped what she was doing and stood up. "My God in heaven, what happened, girl?" "I think she had problems at home," Mr. Jenkins explained, giving his wife a meaningful look. Mrs. Jenkins didn't need more explanations. She had seen the marks on my arms a few times, had noticed my swollen eyes from crying on certain mornings. She had never asked directly, respecting my silence, but I knew she suspected. "Come sit here," she said, pulling out a chair. "I'll make some chamomile tea to calm your nerves." I sat down, still trembling, still holding the spray tightly. Only then did I realize that I hadn't let go of it at any point during my escape. "What happened, Margaret?" Mr. Jenkins asked gently, sitting across from me. "Was it your father again?" I looked at that elderly man, so different from my father. His wrinkled face showed no cruelty, only sincere concern. I can't go back home," I finally managed to say. "Never again." He exchanged a look with his wife, who was putting water to boil on the stove. "You don't have to go back," Mrs. Jenkins said firmly. "You can stay here tonight, and tomorrow we'll decide what to do," Mr. Jenkins completed. "There's my niece Martha who lives in Frankfurt. She's always saying she needs help with the children. Maybe you can stay with her for a while until you decide what you want to do with your life." It was only then, hearing those kind words, feeling the warmth of that simple kitchen, that I fully understood what I had just done. I had broken with my family. I had ended the show once and for all. The tears came with full force now, not from fear or sadness but from relief. A relief so deep that it hurt. The weight of years of silent suffering came crashing down on me, and at the same time, I felt it begin to dissipate like mist under the morning sun. "Everything's fine now," Mrs. Jenkins murmured, placing a steaming cup of tea in front of me and resting a gentle hand on my shoulder. "Everything's fine." And for the first time in my life, I believed it really could be. In that back room, while my family recovered from the pepper spray, I felt a strength I had never experienced before. It wasn't just the adrenaline of the moment. It was a deep certainty that my life was changing forever. When I arrived at Mr. and Mrs. Jenkins' house, trembling and frightened, I had no idea that night would mark the beginning of a completely new journey. After a restless night in the small guest room, I woke to the smell of fresh coffee and the gentle sound of Mrs. Jenkins working in the kitchen. "Good morning, my dear," she said with a kind smile when she saw me standing in the doorway. "Sit down. Let's talk calmly now." While we ate homemade bread with butter and drank coffee, I told them everything. Every detail of the daily show that my family staged with my pain as entertainment, the laughter, the applause, the encouragement, the pleasure they saw in my suffering. "Good Lord," Mrs. Jenkins murmured, wiping tears with the corner of her apron. "How can such people exist?" Mr. Jenkins listened in silence, his face hardening with each new detail I shared. When I finished, he slapped the table, making the cups tremble. "This ends today," he said firmly. "You will not go back to that house, Margaret, never again." It was that morning that I met Sheriff Thompson, a tall man with thick eyebrows who was a longtime friend of Mr. Jenkins. He came to the grocery store as soon as it opened, listened to my story with professional attention, and noted every detail in a worn little notebook. "It will be your word against theirs," he explained honestly. "And unfortunately, in these cases, justice doesn't always work as it should, but we'll do what we can." That morning was a whirlwind. The sheriff asked to see the marks on my arms, photographed them with a police camera, and took my official statement. Meanwhile, Mrs. Jenkins called her niece Martha in Frankfurt, who immediately agreed to take me in. "She has 2 small children," Mrs. Jenkins explained. "She needs help, and you need a safe place away from those people." Around noon, the grocery store door opened violently. My father entered, his eyes still red from the spray, closely followed by my brother. My mother wasn't with them. "Where is she?" my father roared, looking around. "Where's the ungrateful girl who ran away from home?" Mr. Jenkins came out from behind the counter, a frail figure against my father's intimidating presence. But there was a firmness in him that I had never seen. "There's no one here for you, August," he said calmly. "Better go home. Don't give me that talk." My father advanced. "I know she's here. Margaret is a minor and will return home now where she belongs." That's when the back door opened and Sheriff Thompson appeared, still with his little notebook in hand. "Any problem here?" he asked, and the badge on his chest gleamed under the light coming through the shop window. My father took a step back, surprised. My brother, who was always so brave at home, suddenly looked like a frightened boy. "I'm looking for my daughter," my father explained, completely changing his tone. "She left home last night. We're very worried." "I understand," the sheriff replied, leafing through his notebook. "Would this be the same daughter that you and your wife regularly abuse? The same one who has finger marks on her arms and scars on her back? The same one you tried to attack last night with pepper spray in the storage room of your house?" My father's face palled. That's a lie. Who told that lying story?" "I have an official statement," continued the sheriff, "and I think you and your wife should accompany me to the station to clarify this situation. It's her word against ours." My brother intervened, regaining some of his courage. "And she was always a liar since she was little." "Is that so?" The sheriff arched an eyebrow. "Well, then perhaps we can also talk to the neighbors. Mrs. Morgan already told me she hears screams almost every night coming from your house. And Mr. Peterson commented about the constant crying. I think we have quite a few people willing to talk now that someone has finally broken the silence." I was watching everything from a hidden corner behind the kitchen door. I had never seen my father so diminished, so stripped of the power he exercised inside our house. There, under the light of the grocery store, confronted by a man of the law, he seemed smaller, older, almost pathetic. "I'll give two options," the sheriff continued. "You can come with me now willingly, or I can come back with an arrest warrant, and I suggest your wife also voluntarily appear." My father looked around like a cornered animal. His eyes crossed with mine for a brief moment, and I saw something I had never seen before. "Fear. Let's go," he finally said to my brother. "This is a misunderstanding. We'll clarify everything at the station." When they left, accompanied by the sheriff, I felt my legs weaken. Mrs. Jenkins supported me and took me back to the kitchen chair. Mr. Jenkins brought a glass of water with sugar. "You were very brave," he said, gently squeezing my shoulder. "What will happen now?" I asked, my voice almost disappearing. "Probably not much," Mr. Jenkins replied with honesty. "The sheriff will scare them. Maybe keep them overnight, but you know how these things work. We don't have enough evidence for a long conviction." "But they'll look for me," I said, feeling fear grow again. "That's why you're going to Frankfurt today," Mrs. Jenkins declared. "I've already packed your things. Mr. Jenkins will take you to the bus station after lunch. Martha will be waiting for you at the other end." That afternoon, with a small suitcase containing some clothes and the few belongings I had managed to bring from home, plus some items that Mrs. Jenkins insisted on giving me, I boarded the bus to Frankfurt. "Mr. Jenkins handed me an envelope. It's your salary from the last 2 months, plus a little extra I managed to put together. It's not much, but it will help." In the beginning I tried to refuse, but he insisted. "You deserve this and much more, girl. You worked hard. You were honest. You endured what no one should endure. Now, it's time to start over." The bus departed at 3:00 in the afternoon. Through the window I saw Louisville being left behind. The city that knew every detail of my pain, that had been a silent witness to my suffering for so many years, was now diminishing on the horizon. I felt a strange mixture of relief and fear. What awaited me in Frankfurt? Who would I be away from the victim identity I had carried for so long? The journey lasted just over an hour. When I got off at the small bus station, a woman with curly hair and an easy smile waved at me. "You must be Margaret," she said, hugging me as if she had known me for years. "I'm Martha. Welcome to your new life." Martha's house was small but welcoming. She lived with her children, Gerald and Nancy, aged 5 and 3, in a colorful house near the central square. Her husband worked as a truck driver and spent weeks on the road. So, she really needed help with the children. My role would be simple. Help with the children during the day while Martha worked at the fabric store. In exchange, I would have a home, food, and a small salary. More importantly, I would be safe away from my family's reach. On the first night lying in bed in the small room that would be mine, I couldn't sleep. The silence was strange. There wasn't the constant fear of approaching footsteps, of voices calling for another show of cruelty. It was a good silence, a silence of peace, but at the same time frightening in its novelty. It was only on the third night that I was really able to rest, and when I woke up the next morning, looking out the window at the clear Frankfurt sky, I felt something I didn't know. Hope, a fragile, hesitant hope, but real. 3 months after my arrival, I received a letter from Mrs. Jenkins. Sheriff Thompson had kept his promise to follow the case. My parents and brother had spent only 1 night in jail as expected, but something unexpected happened. The story leaked in the city. The neighbors, who had remained silent for so long, began to talk. Some of my father's colleagues at the tobacco company refused to work with him. The community, in its own way, was doing justice. Your father was transferred to a distant branch of the tobacco company. Mrs. Jenkins wrote. They say they're moving to another city. The sheriff thought it best to warn you to stay alert, but he thinks it unlikely they'll try anything. The shame was too great. That letter brought me the closure I needed. It wasn't complete justice. It wasn't the punishment they might deserve, but it was something. It was the end of the power they had over me, the end of the constant fear. The curtain had fallen on that grotesque show, and I had managed to leave the stage with dignity. In Frankfurt, little by little, I began to build a new life. Martha encouraged me to finish my studies at night. Little Gerald and Nancy became attached to me, and I to them. I discovered that I liked teaching, seeing their little eyes shining when they learned something new. At 19, I took the exam for Teachers College and was approved. I would be a teacher, help other children find their voice, believe in themselves, know that they deserved respect and love. It was during this time that I met Herbert, a young pharmacist who had just graduated and was returning to open his own business in town. But that's another story. The story of how a girl who was audience to her own hell discovered that she could be the protagonist of her own happiness. Today at 79, when I look at my small compounding pharmacy here in downtown Louisville, I feel a joy that frightened girl would never have imagined possible. I returned to my hometown after many years, no longer as a victim, but as a strong woman who decided to transform her pain into healing for others. My journey as a pharmacist began unexpectedly, after a few years in Frankfurt, where I completed Teachers College and began working as a teacher. I met Herbert, the young pharmacist who would change the course of my life again. He had just graduated and was returning to open his own compounding pharmacy in town. We met when I went to get a compounded medication for Nancy, Martha's youngest child, who suffered from allergies. Do you know that each medication tells a story? He told me in that first meeting. When I compound a medicine, I'm not just mixing substances. I'm creating something personalized, unique, that will help someone feel better. Those words touched something deep in me. The idea of creating personalized solutions for specific problems, of helping people overcome their difficulties through specialized knowledge fascinated me. I began to visit the pharmacy frequently, asking questions, learning about the processes. Herbert, always patient, explained everything to me with contagious enthusiasm. When we finally decided to get married in 1973, I was already certain I wanted to follow that path. Herbert encouraged me to enter pharmacy school in Louisville. It was a challenging period. I taught during the day in Frankfurt and studied at night, traveling between the two cities every day. You have the strength for this and much more. Herbert always said when he saw me tired, and I did. After everything I had been through in childhood and adolescence, the challenges of adult life seemed manageable, especially having someone by my side who valued me and believed in me. I graduated in 1977, and we began working together at the pharmacy he had founded. Learning in practice, I discovered a vocation I didn't know I had. There was something deeply satisfying about formulating personalized medications, talking with customers, understanding their specific needs, and creating tailored solutions for them. In 1980, we decided to return to Louisville. It was a difficult decision. I was afraid of running into my family, of reliving traumas. But Herbert helped me understand that returning didn't mean going backwards, but showing that I had won. That city is yours too, he said. You have every right to occupy your space in it. We opened Johnson's Pharmacy in a small space on Oak Street. In the beginning, it was just a room divided into a service area and a laboratory. Only the two of us worked there along with one helper. Gradually we grew, earning the community's trust. In 1995, we moved to a larger space on Main Street, and 10 years ago, we finally established our pharmacy here downtown. A dream fulfilled. Today, Johnson's Pharmacy is known throughout Louisville for its quality and humanized service. We have a team of 5 pharmacists, including our daughter Lucy, who followed in our footsteps and now takes care of most of the administration, leaving me free to do what I love most, preparing formulas. My small laboratory at the back of the pharmacy is my sanctuary. There, among carefully labeled bottles, precision scales, and pharmacology books, I feel a peace that for a long time I thought impossible. Each medication I prepare is made with special care, thinking of the person who will receive it. Herbert passed away 5 years ago, a victim of cancer that he faced with the same dignity and strength with which he lived his entire life. His absence still hurts, but his influence remains in every corner of the pharmacy, in every process we develop together, in every smile I exchange with customers. As for my original family, I heard through acquaintances that my father died in 1988 in a town in Ohio. My mother, from what I heard, still lives in a nursing home in the same state. My brother Ronald moved to North Carolina, and I never heard from him again. I didn't seek contact. I learned that family is who welcomes us, who values us, who sees in us more than an object for cruel entertainment. My true family is Lucy and her husband Isaac, my 3 wonderful grandchildren, and the dear friends I've made throughout life. Martha and her children, who took me in when I needed it most. Mr. and Mrs. Jenkins, who unfortunately have already passed away, but whose gesture of courage and kindness I will never forget. On Sundays, I receive my grandchildren here at home for a special lunch. While I prepare treats in the kitchen, I tell stories about medicinal herbs, teach the scientific names of the plants I grow in the small garden in the back, explain how each one can relieve different types of pain. They listen to me, fascinated, asking questions, absorbing not just the knowledge but also the love for healing that Herbert taught me, and that now passes to a new generation. The girl who once lived on a stage of cruelty found her true place in the world. Not as a victim nor as a survivor, but as a healer. Each formula I prepare, each person I help feel better is a small victory against that dark past. It's my way of saying that pain didn't have the last word, that even from the darkest experiences, light can be born. That it is possible, yes, to transform scars into strength. You know, my dears, when I prepare a formula here in my pharmacy, each ingredient has its purpose. Sometimes it's the bitterest ones that heal the most. My life was like that too. That terrible pain I experienced in childhood and youth transformed me into the pharmacist, who today can see beyond the prescription to the person who suffers. When a customer comes in here with slumped shoulders, downcast eyes, speaking in an almost inaudible tone, I recognize the signs. I know it's not just medicine this person needs, but to be seen, to hear someone say, "I'm here. Let's find a solution together." Because that was exactly what I didn't have for years. Last week, a young mother came to the pharmacy with a prescription for her son. While I prepared the medication, she kept looking at my hands, observing each movement with unusual intensity. When I handed her the medicine, she held my hand for a moment and said, "You have no idea how much you helped me when I was a child." Confused, I asked how. She smiled and told me that her mother used to bring her here whenever she was sick. "But it wasn't just the medicine that cured me," she explained. "It was the way you talked to me, explained what each drop of the syrup was for, made me feel important. I grew up wanting to be a pharmacist because of you." At that moment, I understood that my true legacy isn't just the formulas I prepare, but the care I put into each one. The pain my family inflicted on me could have made me bitter, distrustful. Instead, I learned to value every gesture of kindness, every word of recognition. My daughter Lucy sometimes says I'm exaggeratedly attentive with customers. She laughs when she sees me spending 20 minutes explaining how a medication should be taken to an elderly lady. Mom, she won't remember all that, but I know she'll remember that someone cared enough to explain. If there's a lesson I've learned in all these years, it's that true family isn't necessarily the one we're born into, but the one we build with love throughout life. Herbert, Lucy, my grandchildren, my loyal customers, they are my heart family, chosen day by day through small gestures of mutual care, and you who are watching me now in a way are also part of this family I've built. So I ask, if you liked my story, click subscribe and activate the bell. That way we can continue this conversation, this exchange that does this pharmacist, grandma's heart good, and leave in the comments a word that represents what you take from this story. For me, it would be transformation. What would yours be, right now? I'm eager to read. Remember, the same hand that once trembled with fear now prepares remedies that relieve the pain of others. And that, my dears, is the greatest proof that it's never too late to transform our story.